The risen Christ appears again to his disciples by the sea, where they were first called. After echoes of the fishing and feeding miracles, he gives a final reminder of the cost of a disciple's love and obedience. A reading from John, chapter 21. After he appeared to his followers in Jerusalem, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to him, "I am going fishing." They said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. The disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far off from land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of them dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This is now the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he had said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you're younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go where you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this he said to him, "Follow me." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please be seated. Before I start my sermon, I wanted to mention there was one more announcement I forgot. One is that all adults who are still working are encouraged to attend a Bible study exploration meeting with me on Tuesday, April 19th at 6 p.m. in the Fellowship Hall. We'll be discussing Bible study groups and small group options for that age group. And I'm guessing that if the older folks who are here want to come too, we'll probably find a small group for them as well, if you're not in one already. Have you ever met a star? I have a few times. I met George McGovern at my uncle's Dairy Queen in South Dakota. I met Kenny Rogers one time. And I also have met Ben Carson. What stars have you met? Do you want to become a star? Want to become a superstar? Here's how. Journalist David Schenck has written a book on how to become great at almost anything you want. How? Practice. MRI studies show that when we practice, we change the chemistry and structure of the brain. Over time, our brains can think better, remember better, fire our muscles better. Now, there are limits to everything. If you're vertically challenged, you can't play basketball for the NBA, and no diet or work can make a sumo wrestler into a jockey. But science shows us that with time, people can get really good at many different things, and more than one might guess. The key is hard work. Thomas Edison was right after all. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. This is no great surprise to us, to most of us, especially those who grew up on farms where 12 and 14-hour days are common. But beyond hard work, Schenck goes on to say that those who achieve the most are a little bit different. High achievers look at failure differently than most people. Overachievers try to fail. These high achievers deliberately practice until they fail. Then they look at why they failed and how they can do better the next time. Then they find what works and what doesn't. That's different than most of us. Most of us, when we fail, we feel bad and we give up and turn to something else. Then we avoid the situations that cause us grief. Or we do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's a recipe for discouragement. Do you ever feel like giving up in life? I'll bet the Apostle Paul felt like giving up on Easter Sunday. I mean, here's a man who worked and walked with Jesus side by side for 3 years. Peter got to see all sorts of unbelievable miracles, even perform them himself with God's help. Yet Peter denied that he even knew Jesus on Good Friday. And then 3 days later, Jesus comes back from the dead to confront him. How embarrassed would you be if you were Peter? After all that time with Jesus, after all that experience, Peter just didn't get it. Jesus had told him what he was going to do Holy Week, but Peter just didn't get it. When Jesus was arrested on Maundy Thursday, he thought Jesus was gone for good, and he was on his own. So Peter denied Jesus. Jesus had even told Peter that he would deny his Lord, but Peter didn't believe it. The day after Jesus was arrested, 3 times Peter claimed he never knew Jesus. Not once, but 3 times. Then he realized what he'd done, and Peter started to cry. Wouldn't you feel like giving up? Maybe that's why, after the resurrection, Peter decided to go fishing like he did in today's gospel. Or maybe he just needed to think, and fishing was the best way to do that. Maybe that's why you like to fish. So there Peter was, fishing along with a few of the other disciples. Like when they'd met Jesus the first time, Peter and the others had worked all night, but he came up short. And like the first time they'd met, when Jesus shows up, he tells his disciples to try again. And they found fish in abundance, 153 according to John. Almost more fish than they could handle. Again, just like when they met Jesus years before. Luckily, they're close to shore. They managed somehow to make it back without tearing the nets or sinking the boat. Once ashore, Jesus cooks them breakfast. Then Jesus does something extraordinary. He gives Peter a second chance to show himself and show others how faithful he really is. Jesus asks Peter if Peter loved him. Not once, but 3 times. The 3 times part is important. Jesus asked Peter 3 times for a reason. It was to give Peter a chance to completely redeem himself. Jesus asks him once for every time that Peter had denied the Lord the week Jesus died. Jesus tested him, and Peter passed with flying colors. Our God is a God of second chances and third chances and even 17 chances. No matter how much we screw up, if we straighten up and fly right, we're good with God. And if we can drag ourselves back to God when we mess up, we will be extraordinary Christians despite colossal failures. Now, Peter's life was surely filled with ups and downs. Meeting Jesus, following Jesus, walking on water, sinking, understanding Jesus better than anyone else, according to Jesus, but then denying Jesus. After the resurrection, his outer world didn't get any better. But at the end of his life, his inner world was very different. Peter had amazing faith in spite of his hardships. Peter was crucified just like his Lord, according to legend. In fact, legend even has it that he asked to be crucified head down because he wasn't worthy of dying like Jesus. Peter's faith grew by leaps and bounds through the years. One can't imagine that Peter on Good Friday going so bravely to his death so many years later. There's a theory out there about faith, that faith is either given to you or not. That God gives some folks a lot of faith, while others not so much. It's a nice theory, but if it's true, it means that God plays favorites. It means that there's nothing we can do to change how much we trust God. It sounds nice, but it kind of lets us off the hook, doesn't it? But what if faith is just a skill, like any other skill? Maybe some people find faith a bit easier than others. But I believe God gave us all the ability to increase our faith, bit by bit, just like any earthly talent. Faith, like anything else, can grow stronger if it's tested. And Peter's faith was tested not once, but many times. So how do we grow our faith then? Do we try to sin and learn from our mistakes? That might work in golf, but not with faith. If we fail in faith, we hurt ourselves and others in the process. Didn't Jesus tell us to pray, lead us not into temptation? No, we can't try to sin. And we need to avoid temptation if we can. If you've got more than a few extra pounds and your doctor has told you to lose weight, you don't walk on the wild side. You keep ice cream and chocolate out of the house. If you're an alcoholic, don't hang out at Coach's bar. If you like to speed, trade in that Grand Am and get a Yugo. It all helps. Chances to turn from God will come without making life any harder. We will fail from time to time. In time, we all fail in our faith. So what do we do after we fall short? First, we ask God for forgiveness. Second, we ask God for help when we try the next time. Third, we take a hard look at ourselves. Like any high achiever, we see what went wrong. We notice why we didn't trust God, why we slipped. We see the result of our sin. What is it about this situation that made faith difficult? Lastly, we need to think about how to increase our faith. How can we increase our faith? One thing we can do is simply to hang out with other Christians. Missionaries are often sent out in pairs, and with good reason. It's hard work to live in a foreign land with a foreign culture. By yourself, it's easy to get discouraged. It's harder to have faith. In the same way, we increase our faith by remaining in the company of other Christians. When we hang out with other Christians in and out of the church, it makes a huge difference. What else can we do to increase our faith? We can trust God whether we really feel like it or not. Every time we fail to trust God, it's easier to lack faith the next time. We get scared like Peter no doubt did. We shy away from our prayers and pull away from church. But every time our faith falls short is a chance, an opportunity for us to increase our faith the next time. And every time we trust God, it gets easier and easier to trust Him. In time, our hearts will follow our heads. So if you want to play piano or do anything else, practice for 20 years and see what you get. If you want faith like Peter did in the end, understand that you'll have to practice too. And God will help along the way. I guarantee it. Practice, practice, practice. And you too can be a superstar of faith.